Hi, I'm here today with Tom Sipin. Tom is a former police officer with 27 years on the force. He's been training security personnel and law enforcement since 1980. He's been involved with martial arts since he was 3 years old. So,
well, 3.5.
3.5. So he's been doing it a while. But today, Tom is going to talk to us a little bit specifically about firearms. Tom is an expert when it comes to training people in firearms. Tom, what's a good place to start if somebody wants to consider carrying a firearm? What should they be thinking about? Where should they start?
Well, I guess to start, I'd back it up even a little further in the why. I understand with most of the people that are going to be watching this with the blog and everything, the whole interest is in self-defense. And if you're talking self-defense, especially from an instructor's standpoint, it doesn't matter what I can do, or what you can do as an instructor. What matters is what can you impart to your students. And to me, if you're going to really offer self-defense, you want to give those people the most effective tools that you're capable of giving them. We all do, hands, feet, elbows, and knees, which even with firearms you need, which people don't think about a lot of times as those options and why you need them. But still, if you're talking about effective tools, what other, people forget a lot of times that weapons, firearms, small, a lot of those things were invented in the first place, developed in the first place to give potential victims an opportunity to fight back. So you have to, if your attacker is going to be bigger, meaner, stronger, or you're outnumbered, you need something where the potentially much weaker victim has an ability to stop the attacker. And if that's the case, what other tool can you give to someone where someone that's 90, 100 years old in a wheelchair, disabled, could actually stop someone, a thug that's, 18, 20, 13, let me rephrase that, 13 to whatever, that wants to rip their face off, rob their house, beat, rob, kill, rape. What other tool is there that person in a wheelchair could actually effectively stop that attacker than a firearm? So if you're going to give them tools, we want to give them the most effective tools possible, and that would include firearms. Not that a firearm is not, for the answer for everything. It is the answer for some questions. And see, that's where there's maybe a lot of misconceptions on there. I mentioned before about options. There's, your most effective tool, weapon is your brain. Everything else is a tool. And that means your most effective tool for getting yourself into or out of problems is always talking. So you should be practicing that. But with just self-defense, one of the most effective things then as far as tools, again, the idea of tools is to give you an advantage over your attacker. The most basic and effective one would be pepper spray. With effective training, it's about 92% effective. So in addition to being able to talk, pepper spray. Impact tools, short impact tools, flashlights, a little bit longer, umbrellas, a stick, edged weapons. These are things that, someone that is less dangerous has the ability, using these tools, to become more dangerous, to equalize between yourself and your attacker. The two things with that we were talking about before, one, don't carry anything you're not willing to use. And because bottom line, bottom bluff, if you're not willing to use it, someone's going to take it from you and use it against you. And the second thing, whatever you're going to carry, make sure that you're willing to use it and you can use it effectively. So learn about the tool, practice with it to the extent you can, your ability, and learn how to use it. You're going to carry an expandable baton. Do you have the capabilities to use it effectively? Pepper spray, almost anybody can use if you can just press a button. An edged weapon. Again, edged weapon, firearms, the basic thing is make sure that you're actually willing to use it. And, otherwise, yeah, it just becomes a liability because your bluff, someone's going to take it from you.
And Tom, if I can ask you, you mentioned several different self-defense tools of different levels of lethality. So pepper spray, very unlikely you're going to do any permanent damage to anybody. An impact weapon, now you're taking that up a notch. A knife, now you're taking it up another notch. A gun, a firearm, obviously can be a very lethal type of weapon. How important is it as far as both personal liability and liability to other people around you? Again, a lot of these weapons are very easy to use, but how easy are they to use effectively, and how important is training?
Well, something that we've talked about before. We always tell people you have the right to defend yourself. That doesn't mean you have the ability. You can go to a 2 or 3 hour lecture, watch a PowerPoint, never touch a real gun, load, unload, or learn anything about the tactics to use it. And you have the right to get your permit and carry it. But that doesn't mean you have the ability to use it dangerously for bad people and safely for good people. You mentioned you're responsible for every round that comes out of your weapon. And granted, most likelihood of using a firearm is going to be in close range, less than 3 rounds fired, less than 7 rounds almost all the time, and close range. But just because most are going to be like that doesn't mean all. And the necessity of you to train with not just the firearm but everything else leading up to it. I talked before about the ability to aim and use your sights. This is where that basic class where you can just point and squeeze might get you through, but the actual situation you might run into would be, not only are you responsible for every round that comes out of your weapon, but people think, well, you might miss the bad guy. And there's another consideration. Just because you missed the bad guy doesn't mean you missed everybody. And the importance of being effective with your weapon also includes that you've got to be able to use it where you're dangerous to them, and even if the person standing right next to them could be your spouse, your child, and if all you trained for was the easy scenarios, you can't do that. You got to train for the hard ones. You got to train for the worst things you could run into, and that would mean, you're not just pointing and shooting somewhere over there. You're shooting at somebody that's in between people that you need not to hit. And these are things that you need your basics with your firearms: basic stance, grip, sight picture. But basics don't keep you alive. Tactics, how you use that firearm, keep you alive. And that's, just another consideration. What size weapon do you have? You have to know how competent you are with this weapon today under these circumstances. Not, I'm a lot more accurate with a 4-inch barrel. It doesn't matter if you're not carrying that gun today. Another question, a lot of people will tell you, well, you take the biggest gun, you buy the biggest gun, and you wear one carry system, and you always use the same one. There's a couple of things that we tell you differently down here. That's one of them. If you just opt on that one bigger gun, which is easy now because it's Wisconsin and we're wearing coats, and there's going to be times when you're just wearing shorts and a t-shirt. It's that big gun, it's a little heavier, it's harder to conceal, it's kind of a pain, and you're just going into Pick and Save, you're just going in to pay for gas, and you're going to decide, well, you're going to find reasons not to carry the one bigger gun, or not to carry it the one way. What we actually stress down here is you got to have some options. Does that mean you might think about owning at least 2 different guns, one bigger, one smaller? Yeah. And what about carry systems? Well, what are you doing today? Are you sitting at a desk all day? Are you doing a lot of stairs? Are you driving in a car 4 hours away or all day, to go see someone at college, or just because your job requires that? Different circumstances. A shoulder holster, a cross draw, might be, an ankle holster might be real effective and practical for what you're doing today. Whereas, the easiest way to conceal a bigger gun is inside the waistband, behind your hip, what we'll call 4 o'clock position. But if you're in the car and that's covered up because it's inside the waistband under a shirt, sweater, jacket, you got your seatbelt on, and now someone tries to carjack you, guess what? You're not going to get to that holster. Someone knocks you on your butt and starts, mounting you, pounding your head into the ground, you're not going to get to that holster. So there's advantages and disadvantages to a lot of different things, and this is where that 3 hour watch the PowerPoint, is not going to do it for you. Okay, it's not going to really talk about those things. Just like, you know, with the options again that people don't think about. Well, I've got my gun. If I'm not justified in shooting somebody, I'll give them my coat, I'll give them my wallet, you know, whatever else. You're not going to have those options. You know, if once you decide to carry a gun, every situation you get into, there's going to be at least one gun there. You might have to punch, kick, elbow, knee, spray, chair upside the head in order to fight your way to your gun. And because this is only a handgun, you might have to punch, kick, elbow, knee, chair upside the head in order to last long enough, survive long enough for those handgun rounds to actually stop that threat. Because depending on, you know, what you actually hit, if you hit something, handguns don't instantaneously stop someone. You shoot them and they fall down. You know, it takes a while. If you take out central nervous system, the threat's done. But anything else, you're going to basically, you have to create so many holes, or big enough holes, that they lose their fluids fast enough, like bleeding the brakes in your car, when the person won't have any pressure. So, I mean, it's another thing with overall self-defense training and stuff. There's a difference between lethal wounds and stopping power. You might stab somebody with a knife and it's a lethal wound. You might shoot somebody with different calibers ammunition, several rounds, and they might be lethal wounds. That person's going to die an hour from now, tomorrow. That doesn't mean that they're going to stop their threatening actions soon enough to save your life. So you might have had more actual immediate stopping power by hitting them square in the nose or in the throat as hard as you could. You know, the nose not being lethal, but it might be faster stopping power, even though it's not lethal. So, I mean, there's a lot of little differences and stuff, just like, you know, anything else, in what force is necessary, and then how you're going to get to it, how you're going to use it, how you're going to explain it afterwards. You know, there's a lot of different considerations.
Well, I mean, it's certainly a lot of information when it comes to self-defense. We'd love to come back and talk to you more, your wealth of information. But my takeaway from this is, just like any tool you're going to use in a self-defense situation, you need to be prepared to use it, and you need to know how to use it. And firearm is definitely no different. So we appreciate your information today, Tom, and the expertise you bring. And again, this is Tom Sipin from Four Winds Martial Arts. He runs a great program called Hardened Target that incorporates all of the things, all of the tools you talked about today. So we're going to link that information as well, so you guys can check out Tom's program. And again, Tom is a true expert in the field, and I highly recommend it. I have had a chance to train with Tom in the past, and we'll be back if you'll